3 reasons why shaming language and the age of shame is over. So, guys, we're living in an interesting time now where we're seeing this mix of partial traditional values with modern day values. And I think for a lot of men, it's very confusing because if you are romantic and you're trying to navigate this new environment, it's very easy to try and live this environment as a old school romantic when the facts on the ground are suggesting that we're living in a very different environment. And if you're not ready for that environment, you're going to make some mistakes. So, guys, I'm going to tell you today the 3 reasons why the age of shame is over. So, point number 1. Okay, so this is an article from Child Trends, and it's talking about the dramatic increase of births outside of marriage. So, one thing that we're seeing is that younger women are they're having a lot of sex compared to their counterpart men. From the age of 20 to 30, you have a very small group of men that are having, they're having the time of their lives. If they are able to, get attention in their 20s and 30s. But we're seeing a larger, increasing group of men in their 20s to 30s who are not getting any attention, right? And so one of the stats that kind of bears this out is just simple. This is simple childbirths. So it's not a holistic stat, but it is a stat that kind of reveals that women they're actually having the child more out of wedlock. We're seeing overall numbers are at 40%. And we're seeing for, Hispanics, it's up to 52% in 2016. And for black families or black women, it's as high as 70%, 69%. And this is 2016. So we're not sure how high the numbers are now, but the trend is clear. There are more women that are actually having unprotected sex before they're married and having the child than ever before. And so we can look at this across education. We're seeing that with less education, women having a lot more children compared to 1990. And even if you look at just this is another looking at the differences, less than a high school degree. So you're seeing as high as, 80% of, I don't know, that's a very large number, but you're seeing very high numbers of people that are having children before they're married, which means they're having sex, unprotected sex. And you can't necessarily say it might be a one-off, but I'm talking about the trend suggests that in this age, these women are having a lot of sexual attention from however men they're doing it, but compared to the men of their counterparts, a lot more sexual attention. And so on the other side of it, of course, is that you're looking at men in the same age and you're seeing an uptick of men who haven't in the last calendar year, and this is from the Washington Post in 2018, men that did not have sex a single time in the last calendar year is 28%. So that's a lot of men. That's almost 1 in 3 men. It's basically 3 out of every 10 are not having sex once in the past calendar year. And of course we can say incel and we can pick on these guys, but that's not the point of this post or this argument. The point here is men compared to women are having a lot less sex. So when you're hearing that the things about men need to step up and do their job or fulfill their traditional roles, this is not traditional. These last 2 stats are not traditional. A marked increase in number of women having children outside of birth, or outside of wedlock, and you're seeing larger amounts of men who are just not having sex. And this is the chart again. So again, you have to understand, young men, that when you hit your 30 and you're on the ascent of your career and you're meeting a counterpart 30-year-old woman, she might, if she is maybe if us following the trend, if the trend applies, she is in a position of having a lot more sexual experience than you are. So when you're talking about love in this situation, love for her might just be, I don't want to take the risk of all of these random encounters anymore. And for you, love is, I finally have a chance at some sexual attention. Okay? Here's a second reason why men should not be listening to shame. Marriage is coming later, okay? So we know that the age of marriage is slowly drifting, is drifting over 30 for the average man, and it's drifting to 28, 29 for the average woman in America. And even if you don't want to take my word for those statistics, it's pretty simple to verify that the average age of marriage now compared to 5 years ago or even 10 years ago is markedly different. And of course you could say women are working and people have college loan debt and they're doing all kinds of things and are dealing with financial issues that they never dealt before. But the question I'm going to ask is, marriage is coming later. What's going on in that time between the young 20s and the marriageable age of the late 20s to 30? And this might seem on the top end of the curve when you talk about OnlyFans, but look at the sharp increase in OnlyFans models in just 2 years. If there are 1.5 million OnlyFans models, you're talking about a good, I don't know, percentage of maybe 2% of women on. If you're talking about the American, that's 2%. It's not too much, but you're talking about maybe a decimal percent, so maybe 7 or 8% of women who are of legal age doing OnlyFans in America. And if you shrink that down to women that are sexy enough to get a lot of interest, or if they're young or they're on the age range of doing an OnlyFans as a way of making a good income, you can't get accurate stats on stuff like this, but you could possibly see percentages of very sexy women between legal age and 30 of, I don't know, 3% of really, really hot women, I guess. And it might be more than that, I'm not sure. But the point is, this is an option. You have to understand that what OnlyFans is suggesting is, I am basically going to enter the sex trade. And we're seeing this as a progressing option for financial gain, right? And so if you're a guy and you're looking at your counterpart very well might be making money from doing something like OnlyFans. And of course, it's a small percentage. But what I want to talk about is not just the number of people, but the progression of the culture and where it's going. So you have your women that are from 20 to 20, 25, 30, and they're doing things like OnlyFans. And they're doing other things like getting flued out. And I want you to listen to about 30 seconds of this conversation. This is a podcast called Black Girl Stuff. And just listen and I'll make my comments on it as we finish.
These comments, they got everybody, real heated.
One of these comments said, the math ain't mathin'. I don't care if you fly me to the moon. If I don't want to give you no kitty, you're not getting it.
I agree.
Okay. You're not getting it.
So let's get into it. If a man flies you out, are you necessarily agreeing to have sex with him?
What are we talking about right now? I mean, if you fly me out.
Okay, so the first thing I want to say about this article or this conversation is, how common has it gotten for women to get flued out? I'm a guy, so I'm not sure. I can't comment on how common it might be, but if it's as common as this conversation is suggesting, then you might be talking about a good percentage of young, really beautiful girls have at least had an offer to get flown out. And a great number of them have actually gotten flown out. So let's listen to the rest of this.
You're trying to meet me and understand who I am. If things get a little adult-like. They do, but you're not obligated to give up the nanny, right? For a flight.
That's exactly it. I feel like this is courting in general.
Okay, so notice that she said, I feel like this is courting in general, okay? So remember, when you talk about the word courting, courting is going back to a time when people were dating with the intention of marriage. This is like you're proving to the father or the family that you're going to take care of this woman and that you're an upstanding person, and you're courting with the intention of marriage. Now, in this situation, courting has a quite different connotation connected to it. I mean, if you look at the women on the panel, they're all very easy to look at. They're all very sexy, beautiful women. If the idea of doing this has become courting, getting on an airplane, going to see a person who you only met over the internet via Instagram, then clearly the paradigm for relationships has changed quite a bit, yes? And so when you hear the shame about men should be traditional and you young men who don't have enough game or social standing to get the women that you want, you look at this and you're thinking, I'm in my 20s, I'm 25, I just started my job, I'm working off of college loans or just getting off my feet. And you're looking at your 25-year-old counterparts and they're getting offers to get flown out. And I'm not saying that everyone's doing it. I'm not saying how many people are doing it. What I'm saying is the culture has progressed to a point where this is normalized. And so this conversation here has become a conversation about what is the etiquette for getting flown out, okay? And so this is the third point I want you guys to think about when you're hearing about the shame language and people telling men why you should get married and things of the such. And this is an article from the BBC, and here you can see it says that in most 50 states, some estimates figure at 70% of women who file for divorces, okay? And so you're talking about basically 7 out of 10 marriages. And whatever the reason is, the reason is the reason. You can say whatever the reason might be. What is clear is when these unions are breaking up, is 9 times out of 10 is women doing it. And so as people who are thinking about decisions you're going to make down the road with any plan, when you're buying a car or buying a house or you're making decisions about which college you're going to go to, things like that, you have to think about what are the repercussions down the line? What's going to happen down the line? And if you're looking at these kind of statistics, you have to understand that it's very possible that at some point in the future, especially if you go back to the second point, and you're talking about possibly, and I'm not saying that most women or OnlyFans models got flued out, but if you're dealing with a partner who has had a much different sexual past to yourself, and they've had an opportunity to go places and do things that are exciting, and that was the most exciting time of their life, and you enter a union with that person and things get stale because you're working, they're working, you have kids, whatever, and that boredom turns into resentment, and it's possible that resentment might turn into 7 out of 10 walking away. And so when those women walk away, you got to think about the other part of what happens. This is Women's Agenda. This is an Australian article, and this is from the 2017. But I want you to look at the number of men paying child support. And so, of course, this is not just marriage, but just in terms of the encounters. In Australia, the percentage of men paying child support was 87.34% compared to 10% of women. So if you do get into such a union, or you do have a situation where you procreate, there is a very high chance that not only will that person walk away from you, that's 7 out of 10% chance, or 70% chance, but there's also an 87% chance in Australia, and I would say that that number might be similar in America. Let's just say it's 80%. It might be more or less, depends, but you're talking about an 8 out of 10% chance that after that union is over, you are going to be financially liable for at least the duration of the child's adolescence until 18 or 20 or whatever. And so this is something you have to take into account. And so with that, I want to wrap this up by saying to guys, look guys, the age of shame is over. We're living in a different age. And if you're living in an age of romanticism, you're not paying attention to the fact that when you go, for the average man, I'm not talking about the big guy, the guys that are getting chicks and they're gaming everyone and they're getting, that's the outlier. As we've seen, if 28% of men aren't having any sex in the last year, there's probably a group of men in the middle that are having, not much more than that. And so you're talking about, for the great majority of men, we're not experiencing anything close to what our counterparts are experiencing. And so that in itself is non-traditional, which means we're operating in a non-traditional environment. And if you are participating in such an environment, you have to be abreast. You have to understand. When you're hearing the shaming language, that shaming language is basically suggesting, why aren't you acting like your grandfather acted? Why aren't you behaving like people acted in movies, like the traditional ways that men acted? And what you have to remember is that in more traditional times, women acted differently. Women were not getting flued out. Women were not having children out of wedlock at a 60% clip. It's a different age. We're talking about an incredibly different age. And in this age, you simply cannot act traditional. You cannot. And if you do act traditionally, you will pay for it. So guys, solutions, I think you have one of two solutions. Either solution A, of course, is if you're one of the top dogs and you're getting all the play you can get, hey, you're probably not even watching this video. But if you're not one of the top dogs, if you have plans down the road, you need to be very, very careful about vetting who you're with and the possibility of having a child with that person. Because if you do have a child, there's a good chance that you're going to end up paying money, and the custody things, that'll be a whole different issue. Secondly, if you decide to formalize your relationship, there's a very good chance that the person you're formalizing your relationship with has had a very different sexual past compared to yours, simply because you don't have people emailing your Instagram or DMing you on Instagram saying, I'll fly you to Hawaii this week. Women are getting that. And women have been, and if you're a woman of a certain ilk, you've been getting that since you were 18 years old. And every day you're on Instagram, you have men telling you how beautiful you are and what they'll give you. And then all of a sudden you start seeing a difference in the amount of attention you're getting. And then you meet a guy and you say, okay, let's formalize, let's get married. That past is still there. And you're going to have to contend with that past when things get boring. Or the second option is you have to look for a place that's more traditional. So for guys that are thinking about getting on a plane and doing your thing, hey, it is what it is. You got to do what you got to do. But we're not playing the same game that our grandfathers were playing, gentlemen. Our great-grandfathers were playing a different game than us. And if we play the same game that they did by their rules in this environment, we're going to end up in a place that's going to have us in an unfortunate situation. Understand, young men, the game that's being played right now, and play this game correctly. Be smart. Look around. Don't get caught up in the romanticism. Look at the facts. Look at the situation on the ground and move accordingly. That's all for today, guys. I'll catch you in the next video.